Every royal channel covering this story is holding the same weapon. They're just pointing it the wrong way. For 3 months, channel after channel has opened with the same screenshot, an Instagram story, Your Royal Highness, posted, unedited, to millions of followers. And every single one of them stops there. They treat that screenshot like it's the whole case. It's not even the warm-up. While everyone else was replaying a year-old Instagram post, Meghan Markle stood in front of a UN health summit in Geneva and told the world that adults have failed an entire generation of children online. 3 weeks later, her own spokesperson was on the phone with a reporter, defending the exact thing she'd just finished condemning. Wait, what? She spent the speech warning the world about kids and screens, and 3 weeks later, her own team is explaining her kids and screens? Nobody connected those two moments. We're about to. And here's the part that should actually worry her people. The same season this was unfolding, a biographer with a 40-year record of never losing a libel case dropped a new book on this marriage. Almost nobody covering this story has read past the press release. We did. So here's what you're getting. You're going to find out exactly what's sitting in the pages nobody's quoting. You're going to hear her own father, on camera, contradicting one of her favorite stories about herself. And stick around for the 11-minute mark, because there's a piece of footage over 30 years old, sitting in a TV vault that changes how you read everything she's said since. This isn't a story about a title. It's a story about whether anything she's told you, going back to age 11, survives contact with a document. Let's deal with the obvious question. Biographers have been writing about this marriage for 6 years. Why does this book matter more than the last one? 2 reasons. Neither one is hype. Reason 1, track record. Tom Bower has spent 4 decades writing unauthorized biographies of people who could afford the best libel lawyers money can buy. Maxwell, Al-Fayed, Branson, Boris Johnson. Several of them sued him. Maxwell sued him personally and let the case quietly die rather than risk a trial. Think about that. That's not gossip. That's a man whose publisher's lawyers have already done this dance multiple times and won. Reason 2, the response. When this book started getting serialized, the Sussex camp didn't ignore it. They came out swinging, calling it, their words, deranged conspiracy theories. Smart move? Maybe not. There's a rule in crisis management older than the monarchy itself. Don't feed the thing more oxygen than it already has. The second you call something a conspiracy theory out loud, you've just told 10 million people there's a theory worth Googling.
I think that their whole operation, which is now poorly financed because they're not earning real money anymore, is survival. They are desperate to make sure they don't go under and finding ways in which they can somehow prove still relevant. And that isn't easy because, frankly, they're not relevant, other than the potential damage they can do to the royal family in Britain.
Now, the stakes. And I want to be precise here, because everyone before us has gotten sloppy with the word legal. There's no lawsuit. Nobody's been charged with anything. What we actually have is a title, a courtesy title, granted by royal say-so, sitting on top of a multi-million-dollar personal brand. And there's exactly one person on this planet with the constitutional power to take it away. We'll get to who, and why a royal law expert says the rulebook on this is a lot blurrier than the palace wants you to think. That's the crisis, not a courtroom, a signature. Revelation 1, the letter. Every brand needs an origin story. Hers is the 11-year-old who wrote a letter and single-handedly changed a sexist dish soap commercial. UN speech, her own podcast. A tour stop in Colombia 2 years ago, same story, every time. Here's the record. There's real footage. A 1993 Nickelodeon news segment, sitting in a vault, 11-year-old Meghan on camera talking about the letter. That part's true. Nobody's disputing it. Here's what isn't true, or at least, isn't provable. Biographers went looking for evidence that her individual letter was ever read by Procter & Gamble. They found none. What they found instead was a wider letter-writing campaign, one her own father helped organize, using his own contacts to get her on camera in the first place. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. Her own father is on record, in his own documentary, saying he believes she was part of a group campaign, not a lone crusade, and that the solo hero version of the story, quote, may have been a little embellished. Her father, not a tabloid, not an anonymous insider, the man who raised her. That's a real discrepancy, but it's not the biggest one. The biggest one isn't about a story she told once. It's about an agreement she signed.
Meghan and Harry's crisis, completely of their own making, is they have no major projects, no major money earners. And so they're more desperate than ever. And I think that they don't know what to do other than to try and come back to Britain and rebuild themselves as some sort of members of the royal family.
Meghan Markle's shocking humiliation in Geneva finally proves that she has just gone mad.
Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Scamelot, she has taken her scams abroad again.
Revelation 2. The Agreement. January 2020. The Sandringham Summit. The terms are public, still posted on the royal family's own website. Right now, today. The Sussexes agreed not to use Her Royal Highness. Not publicly. Not commercially. Not at all. Now track the record since then. Last April, she reposts a letter on Instagram, unedited, opening with Your Royal Highness. On her own Netflix show, when a friend calls her Meghan Markle on camera, she corrects her. She's Sussex now. And this year, an unconfirmed but widely reported claim that the title showed up again. This time in private business correspondence. I'll flag that last one myself, because almost nobody else will. It's unconfirmed. The outlet that broke it said so. Don't let anyone sell you that one as settled fact. But here's the thing. The case doesn't need it to be. The Instagram post and the Netflix correction are both on camera. Both undeniable. And both already enough to ask, what was that 2020 agreement actually worth? Revelation 3, the timeline that doesn't add up. Here's where almost every channel covering this story has been either lazy or dishonest with you. Go check this yourself. Once you see it, you'll see it everywhere in this genre. The Spotify deal. Every video bundling this into 2026's collapse wants you feeling like 3 deals died in the same 6 months. They didn't. Spotify ended in 2023. 3 years ago. The label's own executive went on record calling it a grifter arrangement after they delivered exactly 1 season from a multi-year deal. That's old news, repackaged as breaking news. I know what you're thinking. Okay, so what? Dates get fuzzy. Sure, but fuzzy dates are how a 3-year-old breakup gets sold to you as this week's scandal. The Netflix story is real. It's also been flattened. This year, Netflix ended its partnership with her lifestyle brand specifically and let the bigger content deal lapse without renewal. One insider summed up the mood inside the building in 3 words: we're done. True, what almost nobody mentions, there's still a separate, smaller deal on the books. A downgrade, not a full break. And Penguin Random House, the book deal everyone's calling terminated, there's no termination letter. What actually exists is an insider telling a reporter the company is privately finished with them after passing on 2 pitched ideas. Real story, not the same thing as a contract being torn up. And that difference matters if you're building a legal case instead of just a headline. If you think that's a messy picture, wait until you see the legal fallout in 5 minutes. Because once these timelines get straightened out, the pattern underneath is worse than the inflated version, not better.
I mean, everything is for commercial and for personal publicity. I think the Bondi Beach was gross. It was insensitive, but it showed the real Meghan. Anything to earn a dime, anything to promote herself. at anyone's expense.
Fascinating thing about all of this is that actually maybe deep down Meghan realizes people don't care about her anymore. They don't engage with her anymore. The thing they do care about is her daughter.
Revelation 4. The pages nobody's quoting. This is the part everyone else got wrong by being lazy. They all cite this biography as their smoking gun. None of them tell you what's actually printed inside it. According to the book, A Confrontation in 2018, inside Kensington Palace, shortly after the wedding, Meghan reportedly telling William to get his finger out of her face while Harry stood there and watched. According to the same book, Queen Camilla privately suggesting, in her own words, that Meghan had brainwashed Harry. Wait, what? A royal biographer is putting words like that in print about the future king's wife? And nobody's reading it? I want to be exact about what this is. These are claims in an unauthorized biography, not court findings, not confessions. The author has a track record of surviving legal challenges to his reporting, but survived a challenge and proven true are not the same sentence. Keep those separate. You're the jury here, not the cheerleader. What's not in dispute is the reaction. The Sussex camp called it a conspiracy theory. The authors spent 40 years being called exactly that by exactly this caliber of subject, and his publisher has kept printing anyway. Revelation 5. The charity boss who said it out loud. If you want to know what people who actually worked with this couple are willing to say with their name attached, look at Sophie Chandauka. She ran Harry's own charity, Sentebale. She went public, on the record, accusing him of bullying and harassment after a dispute over the organization's direction. According to the same new biography, she told Harry directly that major American donors didn't want to be associated with his Netflix output, and especially not with Meghan. Internally, staff had reportedly started calling one of Harry's own signature charity events the Meghan Games, over what they saw as a self-focused media strategy drowning out the wounded veterans the event was actually built for. A colleague said that to his face, not anonymously, not through a tabloid go-between. On the record, her name underneath it. I want to slow down here. It's easy to turn all of this into a scoreboard. Deals lost, titles disputed, books sold, and lose the actual human being who said this out loud and had to live with having said it. Sophie Chandauka didn't ask to become a headline. She took over a children's charity built to fight HIV and AIDS in two of the poorest countries on Earth. She inherited an organization with Harry's name on the door, and Harry's expectations attached to every decision she made. And when she tried to steer that ship somewhere the founders didn't like, what she got back, by her own account, wasn't a conversation. It was conflict, serious enough that she put the word bullying on the record, in public, with her own name underneath it. Think about what that actually costs a person. She's not protected by a royal title. She's not cushioned by a production deal with a streaming giant. She's a charity executive who said something true and uncomfortable about two of the most famous people alive, knowing exactly what that invites. And according to the reporting, what came back from inside the operation wasn't reflection. It was a message relayed straight back to Harry that the brand itself, Meghan's presence in it, specifically, had become something American donors were actively steering around. Read that again, not a tabloid claiming it. A donor-facing executive saying it to the founder's face about his own wife while trying to save a cause meant to help children who will never know any of these names. That's the part that should sit with you longer than any Instagram screenshot ever could.
Whether she's really happy or miserable, whether she realizes what an awful fate awaits her in the years to come when she hasn't got any appeal at all, and people on the whole are bored to death with her and her jam and her silly speeches and ridiculous shots on Instagram, and suddenly becomes an irritating irrelevance.
In my personal opinion is that he's a bit dense. He's not the smartest, he's not the sharpest, and he was easily manipulated by her, and that was part of her attraction to him, is that he was not the brightest bulb in the box. And she can't complain now that she did not marry the brightest bulb in the box. And as it turns out, he's not really good for anything in a lot of ways.
Now let's talk about what all of this is actually worth in dollars and what it's actually worth in law, because those are two different ledgers. And mixing them up is how this whole genre keeps misleading you. The dollars first. Original Netflix deal, roughly 100 million. The Penguin Random House book deal, roughly 40 million across the family. Harry's own memoir advance, alone 20 million. Spotify, a multi-year deal that produced exactly one season of content before it ended 3 years ago, with an executive calling it a fraud on the way out the door. Sentebale, a charity that lost an estimated 23% of its funding when one major sponsor walked. That's the money. Here's the law. Lawyers have a phrase for the gap between what you sign and what you actually do. Material misrepresentation. You're going to hear that phrase thrown around constantly in commentary about this story. I'll tell you straight, because every honest legal voice will tell you the same thing. Nobody has filed that claim. There is no case. Saying otherwise, saying a court has already ruled on this, would just be a lie. So I'm not going to tell you one. What's real, and arguably more dangerous to her long-term, is simpler than a lawsuit. A royal law commentator, a former government minister who's actually studied this question, has said publicly that while the law isn't fully settled, the monarch likely still holds the power to formally strip an Arch title, because the title was granted by royal say-so in the first place. No trial required, no jury, just a signature from whoever's sitting on that throne when patience finally runs out. That's the real fallout, not a courtroom drama, a pen in a palace, waiting. So here's where this actually lands. Strip away the screenshots, the press releases, the recycled headlines, and what you're left with is a pattern, not an accident. A childhood story her own father says was embellished, an agreement she signed and then quietly tested more than once on camera. A timeline of business collapse her defenders want you to believe is recent and sudden, when parts of it are 3 years old. A biography full of specific, on-the-record allegations that almost nobody covering this story has actually opened. And a colleague, not a tabloid, a colleague, willing to put her name on the claim that the brand itself had become something donors wanted to avoid. None of that is a courtroom verdict. It doesn't need to be to tell you something true when the easiest story she ever told, a letter to a dish soap company at age 11, can't survive contact with her own father's memory. You have to wonder what happens to the harder stories, the ones that actually carry stakes. So here's my question, and I genuinely want your theory in the comments. If the very first story she ever told the world about herself didn't survive her own father correcting it on camera, what do you think happens to the version of this marriage we're all being sold right now, the second somebody with the actual documents decides to open the book? Drop your theory below.